Welcome back, YouTube. And for those who do not know me, hello, my name is Noah, and on my channel we talk about death, true crimes, haunted people, places, and things, spiritual reparations, and how you can fuck around and find out. If you are not subscribed here, why? Why not? Subscribe now, bestie, and turn your notification bells on. I know y'all sick of me talking about my trip next year, so just go ahead and reserve your spot because we are literally running out of spots, and we're about to go into a wait list. We only have a few more spots for the actual discounted price, and then after that, all bets are off. So go ahead and book your spot to travel with me and my other besties to Bali, Indonesia in July of 2025. It is only $498 to reserve your spot. You can make payments, you can finance it. All of your activities, including the ones that I am hosting personally, are included in this. We're going to have a ball. You do not want to miss it. On today's episode, we will be going down memory lane back to 2021 whenever there was a trend on TikTok of what is the creepiest thing you've ever experienced. And I will be finding the original creator who everyone is stitching so that you can give him a follow. And I will be linking all of the creators in this video in case you would like to give them a follow as well. Because some of these stories, also, there probably will be a part 2 to this video because there's just way too many experiences and y'all gotta hear them all. I had to listen to them and be scared watching SpongeBob at 33 years old. Y'all gotta watch them all too. So this is probably just part 1. This first creator goes underneath the handle Bishop Mortimer, and he is telling about his intuitive psychic granny.
What's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life and why you still think about that moment?
If y'all been following me for a while, y'all know I've had a lot of spooky, magical experiences growing up. And opposed to a lot of the other stuff I've seen, this one is kind of like PG. So growing up, I was raised by my 2 aunties, my grandmother, and my mother. And we all lived in the same house. One key thing I remember growing up was my grandmother's brother, because she only had one brother, would always come up to visit her at least once a month. And they were getting up there. They were old because by the time I was born, my grandma was already in her 60s. Remember also, I've told you on other story times that my grandmother was psychic because there's a psychic line that runs in my family. Oh, and also side note, what you believe in is what you believe in. And I can vividly remember sometime when my grandmother would be sitting with her brother and they would just be chopping it up, talking and gossip. My grandmother was so intuitive. She could literally tell you the stuff that you did in your day before you got to her house. And she would be accurate. My grandmother was so good. There's a common story that always goes through the family of my grandma was so psychic and intuitive that she would always tell my grandpa when he was cheating. And not like on some women intuition shit, because it could have been that too. Like she would always tell him when he would take the train to Chicago and do his dirt. She would tell him the stuff he did, the place, the person, the woman's backstory, the shit they said in conversation or pillow talk, if you know what I mean. And it would freak my grandpa out to the point where he would be calling my grandma a witch, even though that never stopped him. So occasionally in conversation when my grandma would be talking to her brother in their old age, she would tell him the things he did before he got to the house that day. And you know how them old school black men, they be like, I'll tell you this much, you ain't nothing more than a witch. But he say it playfully. You know how siblings are, especially siblings from the 30s and the 40s. So moving forward, it's 2000. He gets sick. He's on his deathbed. My grandmother and my 2 aunties, they all travel down to Illinois to be by his side. Sadly, we know he's going to pass away, but now we're just like, when? So me and my mom stay back at the house waiting to get the call. And me and my mom are watching this TV in the living room. And my grandmother has around her house, she always had religious relics, statues, little figurines, pictures on the wall. And a key thing she had was 3 dove figurines that she could hang on the wall. And they were right next to that footprints in the sand religious picture where, you know, the one where they're like, when you didn't see footprints, it's when I carried you, that shit. And when I tell you those 3 doves were on the wall since I was born, because you know how sometimes in those old school black elders' houses, they'll have shit sitting there for decades and they'll just have a layer of dust on. But you know better than to touch it because they'll slap your lips off if you do. So anyway, me and my mom were watching TV and we hear something fall off the wall in the dining room. We get up to go see, and we see that one of the doves fall. So instead of 3, there's 2 now. A second later, the phone rings. My mom goes to answer it, and it's my mom's sister telling them that their uncle died, my grandma's brother. My mom pulls out the couch, and she sends me behind the couch that had a lot of shit behind it to go look for it. We don't see anything. It disappears. It didn't break. It didn't shatter. It just vanishes. We tell my grandma, she's all nonchalant about it because, you know, she supernatural down. She's like, oh, it's good to know he made it to the other side. And to this day, we never were able to find that dove. It fell off the wall and vanished.
It's funny because that saying, you ain't nothing more than a witch, that is like old school as hell, but it's a staple. I don't know if other cultures say it, but it's a staple within our community whenever we be knowing things, just knowing things. But it's absolutely crazy how they never found the dove and never turned up. This next creator goes under Big John WDE, and he is a nurse, and he is explaining the one time he heard his name called at his job.
Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life?
Okay. So, as a nurse, we're in the hospital a lot. We see creepy things, but something that really always sticks out with me happened a long time ago in the emergency room I used to work in. The ER I used to work at, I worked second shift, which was 3 to 11 over there, and it was a Friday night, and it was unusually quiet that night. Anyway, in our emergency room that I worked at, there was a room dedicated just to trauma. Heart attacks or massive trauma that was require a lot of hands-on, doctors, nurses, techs, everybody involved. They went to that room. Well, in that room, we always left the light off unless we were needed in there. That was always a signal. If that light was on, something was going on. So I was headed in there to restock some of the supplies in the room. I had a few extra minutes on my hands and decided to make some use of them. Well, as I was restocking the supplies, I heard a very distinct, clear as a bell whisper shout from behind, and it said my name. Now, a whisper shout is when I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" That's a whisper shout. Well, as I was restocking, I clearly, distinctly heard somebody whisper, "John." And I didn't think anything of it, so I just turned around and I said, "Hey, anybody call me?" I walked out the room. I looked up and down the hallway. Nobody was there. I walked to the nurse's station. I asked them, I said, "Hey, did anybody call me?" They said, "No, we didn't need anything." And that creeped me out because I clearly heard somebody call my name and wasn't nobody there. Now, this room, just for reference, like I said, when it's a trauma room, a lot of the heart attacks go in there, major stuff. So, that room has seen its fair share of people who shuffled off their mortal coil. That's where that room is where they spent their last few seconds on this planet. So, yeah, that was my creepiest experience.
John, you was doing too much investigating for me, friend, because you gonna have to call me louder. I'm just walking, especially if I'm in there by myself and that's people's final resting place or final breath place. I'm cool. This next creator goes by Marco J. Williams, and he is telling about his granny's very weird dog collection, but something that was even weirder that happened.
Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life and why you still think about that moment?
For the last 20 years, I used to think my grandmother's house was haunted. If you remember my old account, I told this story before, but since this is a new account, here it goes. My cousin and I would always go to Pittsburgh to visit my grandma's house in the summertime. Now, we would always sleep in this room down the hallway from her creepy doll room. This doll room had porcelain dolls and red carpet, and it projected its own energy. Now, remember, there was this episode of So Weird on Disney Channel, and that show was creepy alone, and it freaked me out where I was like, I don't want to go to the bathroom because something's going to be out there. So I had to go to the bathroom, and there was something out there standing in front of the doll room. It was this shadowy figure. I ended up running back to the room and hiding under the blanket. I don't even think I wanted to use the bathroom at that point. Now, fast forward to March of 2020, I had this very vivid dream where I was in my grandmother's house. In this dream, I was standing in the exact same spot as that shadowy figure, watching my younger self run from the bathroom to the other room. And then I woke up.
He is not the first creator that I've heard a similar story. Like, they seen something in the moment, and then years later they seen it again. This is absolutely weird. Has anybody heard about this or experienced this? Comment down below, because not you being a time traveler and a ghost kinda at the same time. This next creator's name is Nanjis, and she is telling about how when she was a little girl, she's seen a pair of glowing eyes.
Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life?
When I was a child, about 7 or 8 years old, probably, I know I was at least 7 because that's how old I was when we moved into that house. I shared a bedroom with two of my sisters, and one night everybody else was in the parlor, in the living room. So I go to the room. I don't know what I was doing, but the curtains were open. We had mosquito net and then louvers, and then the curtains were open. I turn on the light. When you turn on the light, obviously, and it's dark outside, you can't see anything outside, but I turn on the light, walk into the room, and I just see two eyes staring at me through the window. Two bright eyes. There was no face along with the eyes, just two eyes like this staring at me straight through the window. And the thing about that house is that the rooms in the back, the way the house is built, the windows are quite high off the ground. So even an adult standing on the ground outside, you wouldn't be eye level looking through the window. They were just really that high up. So I knew that it was not a person that I was looking at, number one, because there was no face attached to the eyes. And then also because of the height at which the eyes were. So of course I'm terrified. I scream and run to the parlor to go and tell my parents what I've seen. And immediately they're skeptical for the reason that I've given you, which is, somebody couldn't be standing on the ground outside and seeing eye level through the window. But then also I was a child who was very scared of the dark. So they probably just immediately thought that I had gone back there and spooked myself. But they sent the watch night to go and look. And he went to the back, and he was like, yeah, there's nobody there. And even if somebody was walking around outside, there's no way they could have been looking through the window because it's too high up. So, they tell me like, hey, don't be scared. You probably just made it up in your head. To this day, I know what I saw and I can still see it. And it was extremely creepy. Again, two eyes, no face attached, very, very bright whites, and just two like dark pupils staring at me through the window. And it was around that age when I was also having some very, very weird, like recurring nightmares about, I'm not even going to call it a person, like an entity that had like very, very piercing eyes. I don't know how the two are related, but I know what I saw that night. And every time I go back home, I still when I walk by that bedroom in the night, I'm still scared to look through that window. That's how creepy it was. Like I still get chills thinking about it to this day.
Let me ask y'all something. Why don't y'all be believing y'all children? What them children got to life for? What would be the use? Believe your babies. I keep saying it. I say it a lot during my lives. Believe y'all kids. Them babies don't be having no veil. This next creator goes by Sydney Thompson, and she is recalling a time that someone from her grandmother's church gifted her a Raggedy Ann doll.
Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life and why you still think about them?
I have told this story on my page before when there was a trend going around talking about the creepy experiences that we've had with the Raggedy Ann doll. And how not only we would realize that these dolls would be gifted to spiritually inclined little children. And I'm gonna go ahead and tell y'all off the bat, I don't give a fuck how crazy y'all think this sounds. It fucking happened. And I asked my spirit guides and my ancestors about this because they also brought to my attention and reminded me how I even got the Raggedy Ann doll was a woman from my grandmother's church gave this doll to my grandmother to give to me. The bitch even has my name stitched on her stomach in red thread. So anyway, this doll would come the fuck alive. I remember being in the living room, the adults were in the kitchen because she would only do this shit when it was only me and her in the room. Only me and her in the room. She gets up from where she was next to me, where I was playing at, runs across the living room in my grandmother's house, past the fireplace, jumps up onto the couch, and is like, and when somebody was about to come into the room, just like in Toy Story, she falls. And I would just be standing there like, I remember one time I was in the office at my grandmother's house and I was doing something, and my back turned to the door, and something made me want to turn around, or I was like at the computer or something, but something made me want to look. And here Raggedy Ann is with her 1 foot tall little self peeping around the door frame, and I'm like, what the fuck? So I get up and I go after her, and I look down the hall, put my head out the door, and she's like like running down the hallway until someone's about to see her, and then she plops her ass down at the end of the hallway. There were instances where I had just seen her in one spot, and then just shortly after, she's in a completely different fucking room. And I asked my brother and my cousin, like, did y'all move her or whatever? And they're like, no, we've been doing XYZ. Like, we didn't move her. So it wasn't like they were like trying to fuck with me. They have no idea that I'm experiencing this. The cousins and us, we stay at my grandma's house. Me and my other cousin, we're the oldest cousins. We sleep on the pull-out bed. The other two, they sleep in my granddad's, the spare bedroom. Somehow this doll ends up in the bed with us in the pull-out, and she's rubbing my fucking leg. So I kick her across the room. Instances where, again, it's just me and her in the room, and she's like fucking waving at me from across the room. There was a reason that I only kept this doll at my grandma's house. Like, to this day, this doll is still there at my grandma's house. That's where I kept her.
Raggedy Ann would have met a fireplace. A nice, hot, fiery fireplace. And the weirdest thing is, in the comments of this video, there's other people like, we can relate because this also happened to me. Has anybody ever owned a Raggedy Ann doll? Comment down below. I have not, thank the Lord. My brother did have a Raggedy Andy doll, but somehow, some way, it ended up in the trash. I didn't do it. I don't know. This next user goes by the handle NP Erica, and she is explaining the time she's seen a literal ghost.
So about 10 years ago, I worked as a float pool nurse, and I came in to relieve a charge nurse that had been there for 16 hours. She worked from 7 a to 7 p, but then stayed extra due to short staffing till 11 p, which was, normal for her. She picked up a lot of extra shifts. Everything went as planned. And, my shift went fine until 4 a.m. I was at the nurse's station charting. I looked up and there she was. She was walking towards the elevator, very distinct walked, very distinct hair, had the same bag, was just bopping along like she normally does. And I said, hey, so-and-so, what are you doing here? It's 4 a.m. You just left. She just kept walking like she didn't hear me. So I said, oh, okay, well, maybe she's getting breakfast. I'll catch you when she comes back up. And about 2 hours later at 6 a.m, her husband called and told us that she fell asleep behind the wheel on the way home and crashed into a tree and died.
That is absolutely crazy. Like, her nurse friend left, and then she seen her again and said, hey, you just left. What are you doing here? And they figure out that she passed on the first time she left. Absolutely crazy. This next creator goes by the handle Body by Dimes, and she is remembering the time she went to Tulum and something was in her window.
And why you still think about that moment.
Okay, so one of my experiences was back in 2020 in Tulum. I would never go back, ever. We stayed in a tree house, one of the little tree house hotels. I think it was called like the Canaan or something. I don't remember. But from the very first day that we got there, just a whole bunch of stuff was going on, from like sounds to, it was just a bunch of weird stuff going on. And our hotel room had no service. Like, I had zero service, couldn't get no text, phone calls, nothing the entire time I was there. The only thing I was able to do though, which is really weird, I was able to watch movies and like shows on my phone, but I couldn't get no calls. So one of the days, my friend was asleep. I was on my phone and I couldn't sleep in there. At this point, so much stuff was going on that I had to sleep with the lights on. So I'm watching TVs till I can get tired and just go straight to sleep. And something was like, yo, turn around. And I look out the window and there's like a face in the window, right? It didn't look like a human face, but you can see that it was a face. It wasn't up against the window, but like you can see it, right? And like I'm turning, I'm looking, I'm like, if it was a person, you would have moved by now, right? It's not moving, it's just looking, right? And I'm just like, okay, put the covers over my head and I just went to sleep. Cause I'm like, okay, I don't know what it is. I'm not getting up. I'm not going to look. So I'm like, in the morning, I'm going to just check. And the way the room was set up, like I said, it was a tree house. The way it was set up, nobody could be standing out there where that window is. There's nothing to stand on. Morning, I looked, there was nothing there. The next day, it's about 2:30, 3 o'clock, and I'm on my phone watching movies till it got late. And I was like, I'm gonna just go to sleep. So I put my phone on the nightstand, went under the covers, because again, I'm scared. Went under the covers, and my phone starts ringing. My phone has not rung the entire time I've been there. And my phone started ringing. And I was like, I'd be damned if I reach up out of these covers to go answer the phone. So it stopped, right? I'm having flashbacks. The phone stopped. Like I said, I was not gonna come up from under them covers. The phone stopped. And like all of a sudden, like the sheets, like the bottom of the sheets, like they moved like a gush of wind had came and just blew it. Right when I tell you my fucking heart stopped, like I got so freaked out and I couldn't move. Like I felt paralyzed. So I'm sitting there like literally screaming, I guess in my head, because this person ain't wake up. So
This isn't the first, second, or fifth story that I heard about Tulum being very paranormal and haunted, but just a little secret, Mexico is a very spiritual country. It's a lot of places down there that has some weird shit going on. It's absolutely a portal. This next creator goes by the handle Millie, and she's explaining the time that she thought she was about to either be robbed, assaulted, and how a mysterious man showed up.
Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life and why you still think about that moment?
Okay, so I've got a story, but don't follow me for content like this because I will never talk about stuff like this again. Okay, so I grew up in a really bad area in New York City, and one night it was about 10:30. I was doing laundry and I was coming home. At the time, I had like my door knocker earrings on. I had like a gold chain. I was like really flashy, and I was walking home and I was on my cell phone. And all of a sudden, you know when you feel like someone right behind you, like I just felt like someone was right behind me. So I turned around and I see these two big girls, and they had a look on their face like, what's up? So, I grew up in this neighborhood. I knew they were about to kick my ass. So I was like, oh my God, I was so scared. And the person I was on the phone with, she's like, what's going on? What's going on? And finally I was like I was so scared. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. And all of a sudden I hear someone saying, hey, what's going on? So I turn around and I see this man, right? I'll tell you, this man was fine. Like he must have been like 6'6". He was brown, chocolate brown, with the most beautiful blue eyes I had ever seen. Now, remember, I grew up in this neighborhood and I had never seen this man before. Believe me, I would have noticed if I saw this man before. But he came up to me as if he knew me, and he was like, what's going on? And I was like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. And all of a sudden I hear like the sound of like feet. So I turn away from him and I look, and those girls are running. I mean, they are running fast away from me. And I was like, and the person I was on the phone with, they're like, my God, what's going on? What's going on? Are you okay? And I was like, oh my God, these girls, I think they were about to fight me. Oh my God, I got to thank this man. And I look, he's not there. So mind you, I'm like, what the hell? So I walk towards his building because it was right across the street. The building he came out of, he wasn't there. I run to the corner to see if he's there. He was gone. It was late too, so there was no one on the street. He was gone. And let me tell you, there is no possible way that man could have like jetted out there unless he was like freaking tracks Usain Bolt #2. There was no way. So there's a saying that your mom's prayers still protect you, or your grandmother's prayers. I really believe that's what happened that day. My mom is super spiritual, always praying. My grandmother was always praying at the time when she was alive. Yeah, I think that maybe that was my guardian angel. It was definitely not normal what happened that day. But that instance also led to me changing my life. At the time, I was really angry. I was really trying to prove myself. After that, I kind of realized there's way more to life than that.
You guys do forget that guardian angels can show up in any form. Ancestors can send different spirit guides to Earth to protect. And I really believe this is what this was. This next creator goes underneath the handle Nostalgic Notes and Scenes, and she is telling about a time that her friend had a very weird roommate.
In your life.
This is a really long story, so I'm going to just highlight some things and skim over a bunch to get to the nitty gritty of the story. So, a friend of mine had a family friend that she called a cousin move in with her and stayed with her for about a year to help her out with her child and things like that. But over the course of a year, the cousin just became like a nuisance. So fast forward to like I said, a year has passed, and my friend calls me up and is like, hey, you want to hang out? I'm like, fine. I end up like doing a bunch of errands and like ripping and running with her like all day. And we end up back at her house at like 9 o'clock. And I'm like, girl, I have to go. And she's like, well, I don't want to be alone. And I'm like, why don't you want to be alone? And she tells me that like a few weeks prior, her cousin in the other room in the middle of the night starts speaking in their native tongue, saying that there's a demon on top of her. Okay. And my friend is so freaked out about what has happened. She grabs her baby and they run and they leave. They don't be like, girl, you okay? No, she just up and left in the middle of the night and went and stayed with her pastor and his family for about a week or so or something like that. The power goes out in the entire neighborhood. I'm like, girl, you and the baby, come on, you come stay with me. We got to get out of here. Other stuff happened, but overall, they ended up spending the night with me. And then I didn't hear much about what was going on with that for a minute. Eventually, the pastor comes to me and is like, hey, like, I need your help because, my friend has not left his family's home. And he believes like maybe this has been blown up out of proportion and that maybe if I came along or whatever and we can go back to the house, we could see that the cousin is left because the cousin doesn't know anybody there. The cousin doesn't have a car. And so we're figuring the cousin is gone. So we drive my cars, me, the pastor, and my friend, and we get to her house. Okay. We get in the house and we all like tiptoeing, like so saying the cousin's name, like, hey, you here? And the house doesn't look like anybody has touched a thing in like weeks. So we don't think the cousin is still there. And so my friend is like, I'm just gonna get more of my clothes and and I'm gonna and the pastor like just looks like defeated, like, please looking at me like, can you help? I don't know how we're supposed to help. And he's telling her to open the bedroom door to see if the cousin is in there. And she's like, I can't do it. And she's trying to pack some more clothes. And he's looking at me and she's like telling the pastor, you open the door. And he's like, I'm a guy, I don't feel comfortable like opening a woman's door. And I'm like, eventually he's begging, looking at me like, can you please help? And I'm like, fine. So they are in the back down the hallway nearest like an exit door, and they like this peeking over like, okay. And I'm like saying the cousin's name over and over and over. Eventually I open that door and I shut it like in 2 seconds, and they're like, what did you see? And I'm like, let's get out, let's get to the car, and I won't answer. Here's part 2 of the story I was telling before about one of the creepiest experiences of my life. I've got a lot of weird ones, but anyway, so I was saying that I was at my friend's house and the pastor and her were like at the end of the hall. They were in the kitchen, and so they could go, if something happened, they could just run out the back door. But I was closest to the door at the end of the cousin's door at the end of the hallway. And mind you, we had been in that time. It was a very tiny older house. So we had been in that house for like 10 minutes and we didn't hear a peep. And so, I'm saying the cousin's name, like, hey, are you in here and stuff? And didn't hear anything. So eventually I'm like, okay, like I'm going to open this door. So I open the door and I shut the door and I just say, let's go. And they're like, well, what did you see? And I'm like, let's go. And they're like, but what did you see if y'all don't get out of this house? So we get out of the house and they're still asking me. I'm like, just get in the car. Just get in the car. I'm not saying anything besides like, stop asking me questions. Let's get in the car. Okay. So once I back out and we get further down the street, they were like, what did you see? And I said, when I opened that door, she was just staring at me in silence. Okay. She was right there. And they were like, she was in the house. I'm like, yes, she was in her room that entire time we were in that house. So, okay, I'm going to fast forward over a lot of other things. But the next part of the story is that the owners of the house, because my friend was renting, the owners of the house ended up having to get involved because my friend was like, I'm not coming back in that house until she's gone. And so basically the cousin was telling the owner of the house through text message that the spirits told her that it was safest for her to be in the room and not leave it. So she was using the restroom and doing whatever else in that one room. Now, how she was keeping it clean or if she was keeping it clean, I don't know. But eventually my friend ended up moving out of the house. Everyone was advised to just not open that door. People could hear like growling and things like that. But it was just a bunch of people, and everybody just moved the entire house without opening that bedroom door. And at some point, maybe that day or a few days later, the cousin realized that everybody, like everything was gone in the house and nobody was coming back, that she ended up getting a hotel, but ended up having to be put in the hospital because she had a bunch of bed sores or something like that. And then her family like sent her back to her home country, and some other things happened, but that's the end of gist of that story.
She's braver than me. I wouldn't have went in there. That's what they have help for. You can hire help to help you get your stuff. Y'all be loyal. That is all for today. And if you would like me to cover a topic, person, place, thing, situation, whatever, email me or leave it down below and I'll try my best to cover it. And remember, if you would like me to hear your paranormal, creepy, cryptid story, I am live here on YouTube every Tuesday at the Calls from Beyond call-in show, where you guys call in with the stories and I listen. We are live every Tuesday, 5 p.m. And until next time, y'all do good, be good, stay safe, and look out for part 2 of this video.